I've read you the part of the story of Jesus and his interaction with a certain Pharisee. And everybody understands that if they've been going to church more than 3 or 4 times, they understand what a Pharisee and a Sadducee was. Pharisee was one that was learned of the law, that honored the law, that followed the law, followed the traditions, followed everything that was written up until that point, and considered themselves high and mighty, high and holy, holier than thou, than everybody else, because they followed the law. They followed the traditions. The story actually begins, if you've still got your Bible open, in verse 36 of Luke chapter 7. That's where it begins, and I want to start there to see if we can make sense of what we have read thus far. I want to set it up for you and explain to you that if you've not read the passages before this chapter, Jesus has been doing the work of his Father. Jesus has been preaching. Jesus has been teaching. Jesus has been performing miracles. Jesus has been healing. Jesus has taught on things of the good and the bad fruit. The necessity for building on a firm foundation. Jesus has healed the centurion's servant. Jesus has raised the dead. So many folks have just seen, they've heard of the work of the Lord. They've heard of what he's done. And in verse 36 of Luke chapter 7, it says, and one of the Pharisees desired him, that's Jesus, that he would eat with him. And he went unto the Pharisee's house and he sat down to meat. Quite simply, one of the Pharisees, one of the learned scholars, one of those that were sure that they was doing what God has said for them to do, invites Jesus to take a meal with him in the Pharisee's house. Verse 37 says, and behold, a woman in the city, which was a sinner, when she knew that Jesus sat at meat in the Pharisee's house, brought an alabaster box of ointment. So immediately we're introduced to a woman identified only as a sinner. And in this context, I want you to understand that from the original translation, she was probably a prostitute. There's no other way around it but for me to tell you what she was. One of the most despicable sinners in that day and time. And she finds out that Jesus is coming, and she shows up with an alabaster box. Alabaster is like a marble product, and it was what they kept the ointment, what they kept their salves in. It was a very expensive box, an alabaster box. And in verse 38, it talks about the woman, and stood at his feet behind him weeping, and began to wash his feet with tears, and did wipe them with the hairs of her head, and kissed his feet, and anointed them with the ointment. You see, the description of the woman's demeanor is what we're getting out of this. We can see that she is overwhelmed with emotion. She stands behind Jesus, weeping. She kneels down, in my mind's eye, begins to wash his feet with tears and wipe his tear-drenched feet with her hair. She continuously, BJ, kisses his feet. She anoints his feet with the ointment, or the fragrance oil, if you have a different translation. In some translations. To fully understand the significance and the boldness of this woman, you must understand the traditions of the society at this time. Now, if Simeon was here, he would be able to nod his head in agreement because he's been overseas. In the Middle East, they have very strict traditions about the feet. In this time period, I'm going to come off my notes. I don't know why I even bother making notes some days. Over in the Middle East, the feet is considered the nastiest part of the body. It is considered to be not to be touched. A woman at this time period was not even a third-class citizen. She was well below the third-class citizen. If it became an object of the milk cow has to go that feeds the family or the woman goes. That's the concept they had in the Middle East at that time period. Now for a sinner woman, and I will not keep repeating the word for the children, for the sinner woman, she's way down on the totem pole. And she hears that Jesus is coming. Y'all get it? She said, Jesus is coming. She's gotten the word that Jesus is fixing to go to this Pharisee's house. She had to worship the Son of Man. She is so distraught. She has gotten down to the bottom of the barrel, Ray. She's gotten down to the place to where she's sick and tired of being sick and tired.
Amen.
And she has heard that the Son of Man is coming to eat with this Pharisee. And here's my chance to worship him in a way that I should worship him. What if we as a church, and I'm not talking about Sardis Baptist Church, I'm talking about God's church. What if we as a church had that emotion to worship Jesus Christ as much as this nasty, stinking sinner woman had? Imagine how we could change the world. Imagine what could happen. Imagine if your friends and family seen us worshiping as this sinner woman was worshiping and says, I want that. And in verse 39, we get to see the true mindset of the Pharisee. Verse 39 says, Now when the Pharisee, which had bidden him, saw it, he saw the woman doing what she was doing, he spake within himself, saying, This man, if he were a prophet, would have known who and what manner of woman this is that toucheth him, for she is a sinner. And Jesus answering said unto him, Simon, I have somewhat to say unto thee. And that's where we started. You see, the Pharisee, he's not looking at the glory of what's going on. He's not looking at a fact that a sinner has come home. Seems like I remember a song, Terry, that we sing about that, when a sinner comes home. He's not looking at the fact that the sinner has came and is at the feet of Jesus, and in her mind's eye is begging for comfort, begging for redemption, begging for forgiveness. That should be the time that we're glorified, church. That should be the time that we're praising God. That should be the time that we're singing. There's a new name written down in glory, and it's mine, all mine. You see, we came to the place, church, where we forget that we were that nasty sinner. And we're afraid to let the riffraff in the door. But that's who we need in the church. We need the riffraff. We need the ones that are crying out to God. We need the ones that are down at the bottom of the barrel. We need the ones that need something beside the world to comfort them. They need Jesus Christ. Do you agree with me, church?
Amen.
If you don't, I'm spinning my wheels here.